Awesome.
Yep.
And awesome.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
we can hear you perfect. Your sound is great.
Cool.
Okay, great. So Hardik, Andre, I see Flo's requested to speak. How are you guys doing today while I go make some quick setups? We already have over 100 people here. It's been like a minute. uh, so yeah, while I'm doing a quick setup, what's up with you guys?
I'm fixing bugs in the new website. The early contributors here, Nils knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, we're gonna announce it really soon, so more people will see it. It's just fixing some minor little things.
Ooh. New website that's already live or new website that's going to be live?
New website that's going to be live.
Ooh, nice.
Yes, we've made a couple of revamps, so we're going to announce that today. Okay, so I'm ready. I see a crap ton of familiar faces already. I see Emma, Ayush, Anish. I see Nils, a lot of people here that I recognize. I just want to go ahead and start. Do you guys want to start? Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. So, let's go ahead and start the space. So, hello, everybody, and welcome to the space. So, I am super excited to be here, and I see a lot of familiar faces already. So, for those of you who joined us last week, welcome back. And for those of you who are new, it's nice to meet you. It's nice to meet you. Now, if you're new here and didn't already know, we are Learnweb3 DAO. We're a Web3 learning community that takes you from zero to hero and turns you into a Web3 developer for free. So that's awesome. This week's space is going to be hype for two big reasons. Number one, we have 3 exciting announcements. And number 2, we are teaming up with freaking Flow for this Twitter space. So without further ado, let's begin. Today's Twitter space will last strictly an hour and 20 minutes. We will introduce ourselves, make announcements, and talk about how to become a Web3 developer with Flow. So we're gonna get into what Flow is. What you need to know right now is that Flow is a blockchain. There's a pretty large demand for Cadence developers on Flow right now. Cadence is a new programming language. We're gonna teach it to you guys in the upcoming track, and there's like 750 million. We're going to teach you everything you need to know about how to become a Web3 developer that can use Flow. And to do that today, we have an extremely qualified panel. So all of us work in Web3. So there are 3 of us or 4 of us here. All of us work in Web3. Between all of us, we have experience at MetaMask, Dapper Labs, Ceramic, and Flow. We're all developers, and all of us are sort of where you may want to be right now. So please pay attention. Please give all the speakers a follow, especially Andre. He is our special guest. So with that out of the way, let's get this show on the road. I'd like to let the panel introduce themselves. Before I let the panel introduce themselves, if you didn't already know, if you have a question, raise your hand to speak now, because we usually bring people up to speak mid-space, and we like to go in order of who requested to speak first. So if you think you're going to have a question, just raise your hand to speak now. And if you really want to guarantee that your question gets answered, you can ask your question in the pinned tweet at the top, and we are more likely to get to it, especially if it's a good question. So with all of the introductions with all of the fluff out of the way, let's do introductions. The team today includes me, Hardik, and Andre, I believe. So we'll start with Hardik. Hardik, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you, and what do you do?
Absolutely, yeah. So most of you people here already know me or have seen me around. For those who are new, hello, my name is Hardik. I'm a developer. I've been in tech for 12 years now, and in this sort of Web3/blockchain space for the last 5. Worked at a bunch of different things, L1's protocol engineering across networks and things like that. But Flow is really special to me because it was one of my first Web3 jobs. Was working at Dapper, which is very closely related to Flow if you don't know that. But yeah, I'm super excited for this space, and thank you everyone for being here.
Okay, awesome. Hardik, it's amazing just working with you as a co-founder. You're so hardworking. And I'll never get tired of your introduction. So next up is Andre. Andre, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? Tell the audience, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, sure. But totally +1 on what you said about Hardik. It's been awesome to work with you. and really love what you guys are doing with LearnWeb3. So a little bit about me. Currently, I'm on the developer advocacy team at Flow. Before that, I was at Amazon for a long time. And I got into the Web3 space accidentally. Last year, I created a website that went viral. I don't know if any of you used it. It's called The Coin Perspective. I was researching the space and I needed a website that helped me better compare projects because there's a lot of good projects and there's a lot of bad projects. And so I created this site, posted it on Reddit, went viral. I think it's gotten hundreds of thousands of users, millions of views. But the most useful thing out of that was kind of really having to learn the space and having to live it and breathe it for a long time. And the more you live it and breathe it, the more you start to understand what actually matters. And so when the opportunity came about to join the Flow team, the two biggest projects I had ever heard of were CryptoKitties and NBA Top Shot. And the reason I'd heard about them is because those two projects broke through the crypto space, right? The crypto sphere is very self-referencing. It's a very closed and hyped space, but it doesn't really break through to the main audience, which is the rest of the world. But those two projects had. And when I realized that those two projects were built by the same team, I was like, okay, they have something going on. I want to help that team, and I want to work with that team. So that's the reason that I'm here, and I couldn't be more excited to talk to you all about Flow, answer any questions. So maybe we can start with that.
Okay, awesome. We'll get into questions in a little bit. I'll just quickly introduce myself after. I see a couple of people that requested that at least one person that I want to bring up soon. So a little bit about myself. Thank you so much, Andre, for that introduction. It's been like fun like meeting you and talking with you over the past couple of weeks, and I'm really like excited. I think for this Flow track that's coming out. And guys, if you have any questions for Andre, sorry. I have brain farts for Andre. If you have any questions for Andre, just hit him up, but especially give him a follow. He is sort of here on a Saturday with us, and yeah, he's here at the Saturday on us, and he sort of does dev advocacy and other stuff at Flow.
I like that you said sort of does.
Sorry, no,
Just kidding.
I'm having brain farts. I'm trying to make sure everything's organized right now. Okay. So as for myself, my name is Casey. I've worked in Web3 as a developer and a technical writer, and right now I'm the co-founder of Learnweb3 DAO. Excuse my brain farts. Andre definitely 100% does dev advocacy at Flow. I just brain fart sometimes when I'm trying to organize this space. My bad. So bring up somebody here. With introductions out of the way, let's get this show on the road. So today's topics are number 1, announcements. Number 2, a bit about Web3. Number 3, a bit about Flow. And number 4, how to be a Flow developer with Learnweb3 DAO. So our first topic is announcements, right? And then we're going to talk about Web3 and then Flow and then a bit more about, how to be a Flow developer. So we'll start with announcements. Our first major announcement is that a profiles, aka part 1 of our job board is launching. So I'm going to go ahead and let Hardik talk a bit about that.
Absolutely. So this goes hand in hand. We promised this on the last Twitter space. We thought that it'd be a nice time to launch along with the new track as well. And it's finally here. You can go currently on beta.learnweb3.io to experience the new website, profiles, all of that stuff. And this is obviously a step towards the job board once we have enough profiles set up and people sort of have done those things. The job board will open up and your profile will almost act as your resume for applying to jobs directly through the platform. And yeah, super excited to launch it. The beta testers, the early contributors, got access to it a couple of hours ago. For everybody else, it's beta.learnweb3.io, and I will be sharing it on Discord as well. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that's going to be out pretty pretty soon. It's already out on a link, beta.learnweb3.io, and we're really excited about that. Our next major announcement is that we are launching the Flow track next week. So you can be a Web3 developer on Flow, and this track is unique. It's very special because unlike with our first 4 tracks, unlike with our older tracks, we're actually going to be working really closely with Flow, and for the first time in history, we're sort of going to be looking at who completes the content first, who's doing we have we're going to be looking at sort of more things than we do with our older tracks, and we're going to be going back and forth with Flow in order to nurture developers, and see who's progressing the fastest, and sort of nurture developers and make sure we can sort of build up developers on the Flow ecosystem. So this track is very special, and I am honestly super more so than the other tracks. I'm really excited for you guys to sort of get your hands on it and to start working with it, and that's going to be out next week. And this leads us into our last announcement. Our last announcement is that we are completely revamping the contributor system. So LearnWeb3 is starting to get global attention, and sort of with the moves we're making in the background, this isn't going to be a tight-knit community of developers anymore. It's going to be massive. It's already pretty big, but it's going to be even bigger, and we want to recognize the people who have sort of been here since the start. So this will transition, obviously, this community will transition into a community-owned DAO, and the first step of that is sort of recognizing you guys on chain. So we'll be issuing special NFTs for our contributors, our beta testers, our moderators, and that is just the start. LW3 obviously has been growing a lot, and we sort of want to recognize the people who have been here since the beginning. So those are our announcements. We have a bit of a special guest hop on the stage really quickly. Francesco, hi. Before we start our topics, do you want to just say hi to everybody?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me on stage. I'll be super fast because this space is about LearnWeb3 DAO. I just want to say that I'm a huge fan of LearnWeb3 DAO. It's the only community that I'm active in, except mine. And I already seen all the effort that all of you are putting into it. And yeah, I'm about to cry because it's really a lot of work, and you are creating something great. Just want to say this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being such a big sort of community member and contributor, Francesco, and always advocating for us. It's been amazing having you in the community, and I love sort of when you come on these spaces just to say hi, right? And to give your takes on things. I really love you, and thank you for coming up. Okay, so we finished our announcements. Just to recap, we have sort of part 1 of the job board profiles that's launching today, and you can already view that on beta.learnweb3.io. We have the Flow track coming out next week, and then we have sort of contributor upgrades. So we'll be able to sort of track our contributors better and sort of recognize people who are here since the start. Awesome. So those are our announcements. Let's move on to our topics, which I'm sure is what you guys came here to see. So yeah, so we're going to get into our topics now. So before we get into Flow, I know there are people in the audience who are a bit newer to Web3. So for our first topic, and I only want one person to answer this. So before I move on to Flow, we're gonna talk a bit generally about Web3. So our first topic, and I want maybe Hardik to answer this, but the first question that I want to ask is for those of you, for Hardik. So for people in the audience who are sort of newer to Web3 and are sort of just exploring and getting into it, the first question I want to ask is what exactly is a Web3 developer? And maybe if you can give us a quick roadmap before we get into sort of what it means to be a Web3 developer on Flow.
Absolutely, yeah. I see there's a bunch of people who already asked this question in the pinned tweet above as well. There's a really common question. Obviously, we get asked this a lot. Quick TLDR that I've gotten over time is that basically, first of all, you need to understand that Web 2 and Web 3 is not technically very different. A lot of the tech stack carries over. So if you have previous Web2 experience, that's definitely going to help a lot. Like obviously there's new things, right? There's new things specific to the Web3 space, but that doesn't mean like all your previous knowledge is lost. And also if you're a new programmer in general, a decent amount of things you'll be learning overlap between both of those two things. So first of all, like focus on like the fundamentals, right? Like don't just go out and do a tutorial on like how do you build an NFT collection without truly understanding why you're building it on a specific blockchain, or why you're doing things a certain way. Like try to focus on the fundamentals, understand sort of the concepts behind it. You can do this on LearnWeb3, you can do it by yourself elsewhere if you want. This is a very generalized sort of advice I'm giving. And once you find like something works for you, the next step I would say, which I kind of like regret from my early days, is like build a community within a community. What that basically means is have like a few people, like 2, 3, 4 people around you who are on a similar journey. And you can find these people in like communities, again, like LearnWeb3 or Developer DAO or Build Space or anything, right? Find some people who are on a similar journey. That will 10x your growth, because no single person can keep up with everything that's happening in the space. It moves way too fast. So having people around you who are learning as well, who are exploring different things, you'll bounce off ideas and learn from each other. And that's really, really valuable when you're early. And lastly, don't be stuck in tutorial hell. Tutorials and courses and everything, these are really great things to get started, obviously, but at some point you need to go out, you need to start creating your own things, your own ideas. The best suggestion I have there is to take part in hackathons. There's a ton of great online hackathons, in-person hackathons, if you can attend them, all sorts of different things for different chains, different technologies you can play around with. So use the courses and the tutorials as a way to sort of get started. But at the end of the day, to sort of stand out from the competition, if your end goal is to search for jobs, at the end of the day, to stand out, you're going to need to create something original, because otherwise, if you follow a tutorial, there's going to be 1,000 people on GitHub who have the exact same code as you, and that doesn't really make you stand out. It's good for learning, but at the end of the day, use those 2 or 3 people from your community, from your friends, and form a team, go to a hackathon and build shit, and that will take you a really long way. That's sort of my advice overall.
Yeah, and do you mind if I just add one little thing? I totally agree with everything you just said. I also think there's another great thing that you can do once you kind of know your way around the tech stack, and that's to participate in bounties and grants. I think that's a great way to get involved with something that the ecosystem needs or that a project needs. So you know that you're not, you're using your time very effectively because you're actually satisfying a demand that the ecosystem has.
Agreed 100%. And thank you for adding that, Andre. Yeah, so going back to sort of what Hardik and Andre just said, that's a bit about how, like, generally, like, what is Web3 and how to become a Web3 developer. And they sort of gave us some really good tips. And I think a good sort of portal into becoming a Web3 developer, a portal into like actually building cool stuff, stuff that may get you a job, is Flow, right? So we talked about how there is a lot of demand for Flow developers. And again, you'll be able to learn all of this on our new track. But what exactly is Flow? So on our next topic, I kind of want to know, our next topic is, what is Flow? What's Flow actually used for? And lastly, like, what's the demand for Flow developers? So we talked a little bit about how to become a Web3 developer in general. Hardik and Andre give really, really good tips. But now I want to know, like, using that as a portal, right? Using Flow as a portal, how for people that are interested in becoming Web3 developers and doing so through Flow, what is Flow? What's Flow actually used for? And what's the demand for Flow developers? So maybe Andre,
Yep.
you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So right off the bat, I want to just say that Flow is general purpose, meaning that it can be used for anything that anyone wants to build on Web3. There are some more successful projects, right, that kind of lean people towards one type of project like NFTs, mainly thanks to NBA Top Shot's success. But that's not specifically what it was built for. It was built as a layer one general purpose chain. Now, to understand why it exists, given that there's a lot of different chains out there, it's important to kind of go back to what I was mentioning earlier about the history. So the team that created Flow is a team that was one of the first teams kind of building successful, widely adopted projects on Ethereum. They built the first game, CryptoKitties. I don't know if anyone here has any CryptoKitties. And building CryptoKitties gave the team a lot of learnings. The first learning was that it doesn't scale well. And they were actually the first team to break Ethereum. I know that recently there's been news about, you know, other projects breaking Ethereum, but CryptoKitties broke Ethereum years ago. And the reason for that is as soon as, you know, more than 1,000 or so people started to make transactions, the network wasn't able to handle it. So one of the requirements for building on a protocol that allowed for mass adoption, right, for the next billion people, was it needs to scale. Then the other learning was writing smart contracts in Solidity is not the best experience. And I don't want to be the one telling you. I want you to learn it for yourself. I want you to experience it for yourself. And you're going to be able to do that through the Learn-Web3 course and all of the other content that we have in the community. So you can make that decision for yourself. But you know, the reason why Flow uses a different language called Cadence is because smart contracts are hard enough, but and so they need to be very readable. They need to encourage safety at the protocol level, right? You can't trust humans to never make mistakes. People make mistakes, so you need to, you know, have checks in place and engineer and architect the language in a way that it prevents as many mistakes as possible, and I'll get into that in just a second. And really importantly, especially in the Web3 and crypto space, is user onboarding, right? Not everyone in the world wants to go deep and figure out what private keys are, you know, how you have cold storage and hot storage and you have different wallets. It's fun and it's really great to tinker with all these technologies, especially as developers, but the majority of people don't care about that. The majority of people just want a safe and smooth experience. And so with these three learnings in mind, right? Scale, developer experience, and user experience, Flow was born. The team didn't even want to build Flow. So one of the stories that I learned when joining was that the team actually looked around for the next chain to build on. But every chain that they evaluated kind of fell short in one of those three areas. So they ended up, you know, Flow was born. The way that it achieves scale is separating consensus from compute. This was also a pretty novel idea. So we have different node types. There's execution nodes, and then there's the consensus nodes. And there's other types of nodes, but I won't get into the details. But the main concept is the nodes that do the consensus don't have to be as beefy or as nodes that do the actual computation, right? That means that the consensus nodes can scale differently and have to have a lot less load than the computation nodes, called execution nodes, that can be probably as big as data centers one day, right? And that makes the whole protocol a lot more scalable once millions and billions of people join in, and millions have already done so. Yeah, and so with the developer experiences I was mentioning, Cadence is different. It's inspired in terms of syntax with pretty common languages like TypeScript, Swift, and it borrows some concepts from Kotlin and Rust. And the biggest concept that Cadence introduces is resource orientation. If you've built on Solidity, you know that they use something called a ledger-based model, right? Where your state is stored in the smart contract itself, basically in an object map. So you have an object where you say this address has this NFT, or this address has this many tokens, meaning that all of the state is within the smart contract itself. With Flow, state is stored, and resources, which are these concepts, are stored in the user's account. So what are resources? Resources are any type of asset that is created, and it can only be explicitly created, destroyed, or moved. It can never be duplicated or accidentally lost. As you can imagine, if we're dealing with assets and scarce digital assets, especially like tokens, like NFTs, you definitely don't want maybe a random mistake or any type of glitch in the execution to potentially, or mistake in the programming to potentially either lose or duplicate assets, right? That would kind of be that would be disastrous, and it has been disastrous on Ethereum in a lot of different cases, especially when everything is stored in a single smart contract. If that account gets hacked, then the smart contract has all the state. Whereas on Flow, the resources are stored in each account. So when you mint an NFT, it's actually stored on your account, right? And you give access to that NFT for maybe retrieving metadata via capabilities. So it has a very logical way of thinking about digital assets in the sense that they work exactly like in real life. You own your assets, they're in your account, and you give permissions to others, whether they be smart contracts or other people, to access those assets however you want. And that also makes it safer, because if you don't give permission, then people don't have access. So again, I could speak all day about all of the advantages, and I'm happy to answer more questions. And feel free to ping me offline if you have more questions about Cadence or Flow. But the third pillar is the user onboarding. Again, it's super important for projects that want to scale to millions or billions of people, that the user onboarding is as friction-free and as delightful as possible. And Flow kind of really focused on that right from the beginning. On the developer side, we have the Flow client library, which is essentially the equivalent of Web3.js on Ethereum. And but with the difference that if you use FCL, Flow client library, you have to implement it once, and as a developer, you implement it once, and as a user, you can choose whatever wallet you want to use on Flow without having the developer have to change their code, right? And I think this is a really, really important fact, so that as more wallets get created on Flow, both the developer and the user don't have to worry about it, right? Everything is abstracted away. And anyone is free to choose whatever wallet they want. And speaking of wallets and speaking of user onboarding, great thing about Flow is super low transaction fees. Usually all transaction fees are subsidized by the wallets themselves. A great case in point is a project called Float, which is a proof of attendance platform on Flow. And kind of like POAP on Ethereum. And so far, Float has minted something like 3.2 million attendance NFTs for people who attended various events. Anyone can create a Float event, and anyone who's at that event can mint a Float NFT, right? But 3.2 million NFTs were minted, and users didn't have to pay any gas fees because they were sponsored or subsidized by wallets. And even the wallets, they were like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a cent, meaning that all those transactions combined probably equated to a couple dollars. And last of all, and sorry if I'm rambling, I don't know at what level of detail you want me to talk about Flow, but I am wrapping up, don't worry. Last thing to mention, especially in this day and age, I'm based in Europe, I'm based in Italy. I'm seeing all on the news all the time how climate change is becoming, it always was, but is becoming increasingly a big issue, and we really need to change the way that we kind of live in the world and make sure that we have less of an impact in the world. The great thing about Flow is it's probably the most carbon-friendly Web3 protocol. I don't want to claim it because I haven't like evaluated every single possible protocol, but among the top ones, we are probably the most carbon-friendly. I invite you to do your own research, of course, but based on estimations, tens of NFTs can be minted with less energy than it takes to do a Google search. So if you care about that side of of things, then Flow is also a great place to kind of build on because it's very eco-friendly. And yeah, as Casey mentioned, we have a 750 million ecosystem fund. So if you're looking to go big, you go through the Learn Web3 course and you're loving it, you're loving Flow, you're loving Cadence, and you're like, okay, I want to make a career out of this. Then yeah, you can definitely check out the fund and see if see if there's an opportunity for you.
Yeah.
And the last question, promise I'll finish. The last question is, what is the demand for Flow developers that you mentioned, Casey? Well, the demand for Flow developers is actually huge. We have, due to Flow's kind of focus on mass adoption and like going after the normies, right? A lot of the world's top companies are building on Flow. So, and for example, Instagram recently announced that Flow NFTs are compatible with their new feature. Mattel and Amoka brands, NBA, UFC, NFL, etc. The upside of that is there's a lot of brands building on Flow. The downside is that we don't have enough Cadence developers. So we actually, we highly invite everyone to check out Cadence and become smart contract developers on Flow because there's a ton of demand for you. I'll leave it at that, and I can answer any more questions. Sorry if I talk too much.
It's okay. No worries. That was a lot of detail, and you already got a couple of questions in the question thread that we'll get to in a bit. Hardik, I know you had something to say on this. Keep it concise though, because we want to move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up and quickly say that one of the cool things that will itch your, what's the word for it? Tickle your developer itch. It's cool to know that the team behind Flow, the team behind Dapper, when they created CryptoKitties and broke Ethereum, right, for the first time, after that, they were also actually the people who created the ERC 721 token standard. So any of you who've been with us or been in Web3 as a developer for even a little bit, you've 100% heard about NFTs and ERC 721, and it's cool to know these are the same people behind it. And generally, on the dev side, again, you'll see that it's as sort of Andrea said, it's very user friendly. It's focused towards normies. MetaMask can be too complicated for average users to set up, and yeah, they have shit ton of huge brands building on them. NBA, UFL, sorry, not NFC, NBA, NFL, UFC, all these guys. But yeah, I think as a developer, when you start playing with Cadence, I've been working a lot more with Cadence as we've sort of been building this track, and it's super exciting, and I'm sure you'll see that when the track comes out in a few days. It's really a different model of thinking compared to Solidity, and once you sort of get beyond the initial couple of hours of a learning curve, it's actually pretty cool to think about what happens. But yeah, just wanted to leave it at that. This is a fun fact, I think.
Awesome. No, thank you for mentioning that. And just a bit about the demand. I think, not a lot of people know Cadence, right? Working with it as we've sort of built out this track has been really fun, and not a lot of people know it. And as Andre mentioned, as Hardik mentioned, there's a big demand for it right now. So it's going to be, I think, really, really cool to see our Learn Web3, Learn Web3 users, Learn Web3 students, our community members, dig into the track and like learn, how to use Cadence, right? And sort of put themselves ahead. And I feel like this is going to be one of the tracks where, it's one I'm pretty excited for, but I think it's going to be one of the tracks where like, students will like hopefully be able to complete it and hopefully be able to, perhaps get an opportunity with it or get maybe a grant with it. So, Cadence, as we said, it's not really super well known. And I mean, it's not that it's not well known, it's that there's a demand for people that know it. And I think it's really interesting. And we've been talking all day about this. I want to move on to the next topic, which is, how do you become how do you become a Web3 developer, with LearnWeb3 and Flow, right? Like, how are you going to be able to learn this with us? And I think I'm going to let Hardik go after me, but I think the obvious answer is, for people that are in the audience right now that are, if you've been listening to Flow for the past like 20 minutes, maybe you're wondering like, how are we going to sort of learn this and be able to tap into this ecosystem and tap into this perhaps future opportunities? And the answer to that is we're going to have a Flow track coming out next week. So you will be able to learn everything you need to know about Flow. We will teach you Cadence, which is Flow's programming language, and it's not super hard to do. There will be like 2 really cool programming levels, and we will be actually like for the first time like looking at like, who's finishing first, right? Who's doing like really good work and communicating and collaborating with Andre and collaborating with Flow to sort of nurture these developers on the ecosystem and try to give them access to opportunities. So in that sense, this is going to be our first like really interesting track, and that's how you'll be able to learn with us. So it'll be just like any other track, right? It's going to come out. You're going to see a new track on the website, but it's going to be a lot different in how it works internally because, we've revamped how we look at users, right? We revamped like how we look at people who are doing content. So it's no longer like, like somebody like, I don't know, like Abbas or somebody like finishes the track first and, and someone finishes the track like 3 months later. And, Abbas did a crap ton of work on it and, went above and beyond and made cool things. And, they're seen as the same. They're seen as graduates, right? It's going to be that we're going to know a lot more about sort of who's doing the tracks and be able to sort of nurture these developers. And I think that's what's going to be the most interesting about it. So just in conclusion, the track is going to come out next week. It's going to be on like the new track section when it come out with our new website. And you're going to be able to sort of do it as you normally do, but internally it's going to work a bit differently with, how we see you as you do the track. And I think that's going to be interesting. And also, since profiles are out, once you finish the track and you get your NFT, you get your graduation certificate, you'll be able to see your certificate directly on the website. And I think that's really interesting. And sort of all of these changes are leading up to sort of a big change that's happening later on that I can't really talk about right now, but probably our biggest announcement, our biggest change is going to be happening soon, which is awesome. Hardik, I've been rambling a bit. We have a crap ton of questions that I want to get through. Do you want to talk a bit about how people are going to be able to, be Web3 developers with Flow knowledge using a LearnWeb3 DAO?
Yeah, 100% agree with everything you just said. Just a couple of things I wanted to add on is also that we're working with Flow. We've been working with Andrea for the past few weeks. We're also like at the end of the track, we're going to have a pathway for you guys to like, if you have an idea, you want to build something on Flow mainnet, maybe you want like some support for it. We're going to have a pathway for you to like apply to grants from Flow. As you mentioned, there's a $750 million grants fund for developers building on Flow. So we're going to have a pathway to sort of like guide you through how to do a grant application and things like that. And obviously also helping out on the Discord and everything if anybody has any questions about it. And later on, like, as we all know, like profiles is a step towards the sort of jobs/opportunities section. So as soon as that comes up, we're also going to be working with the team there to sort of bring opportunities from the Flow ecosystem to all of you guys. And obviously, if you've gone through the track, you've completed it, you have that knowledge, you're going to be a like fairly well-positioned candidate for those sort of things. But yeah.
Agreed 100%. And I think this new sort of model this new track model that we're coming in, and this is going to be with Flow and every other future track that we do, is because we sort of felt like internally, we felt like, you know, we have people that complete these learning tracks and it's cool, like they know the knowledge, which is great, right? But we felt like perhaps, you know, we want to be able to nurture developers in a more holistic fashion, right? Which is why, you know, we're partnering with Flow, and we're going to be with our future partners with Ceramics, CyberConnect. We're going to be sort of nurturing. You know, when you're doing the track, it's not just, you know, for your own knowledge now. Like, you'll have a profile, you have a certificate, you'll be able to see it on chain, right? We really want to nurture developers, and that's the really big difference. That's a really, really big change that's coming out, and that's sort of a big change that we're doing internally, and it's shifting into sort of one larger change, but we're really excited for it. And yeah, you'll be able to essentially by next week, you'll be able to, you know, come on to Learn Web3, you know, do the track like you normally would, like any other track. We have 5 tracks so far, but, you know, everything's different, right? Internally, we're really going to try to be nurturing developers and going back and forth with Flow consistently, month to month to month, right? To see, you know, who's building what. And we're really, really excited about that. And that's going to be sort of the new model for any other track coming out in the near future. We want to sort of nurture you guys, which is really, really exciting. Great. It's already 11:44. I'm being really strict with the timing. So I really want to sort of end at a maximum at 11:20, or not 11:20, 12:20, because we always go overtime. So let's get into some questions, and then perhaps at the end we'll talk about what you can build on Flow. So one question that we have, and I believe this is for you, Andrea. By the way, I think I'm mispronouncing your name. Can you correct me quickly?
The last time you said it was perfect, Andrea. Yeah.
Andrea. Okay. I am so sorry. Andrea. Okay, awesome. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. We have a question coming in to you from somebody named Macchio, and he's asking, you know, how hard is it to learn Cadence if you're a Solidity developer already?
I would love to answer that, but I think it would be more powerful if I let someone from our community answer this, who's also here, and he comes from the Solidity world, so you get, you know, like an actual authentic answer and not my answer, which of course is going to be, you know, the short answer is easy and awesome. But if you could let Jacob Tucker chime in, I'm sure he can give a good testimonial around how it was for him to move from Solidity to Cadence.
I see him. I am sorry for not bringing you up earlier. Jacob, what's up?
Hi. Thanks, Andrea, for bringing me on here. I'll try to be pretty concise about this. So yeah, I came from a Solidity background, and I was doing some Solidity development for a while. But then I got introduced to the whole Cadence world through a boot camp. And long story short, I've come to love Cadence. And I think one of the great reasons why I love Cadence so much more than Solidity is because it's a lot more readable for beginners. I think, you know, of course, if you don't know coding, it's still going to be hard to read. But when you get a sense of what Cadence is, it's a lot easier to look at a contract and read over, you know, what exactly it's doing. And again, this is coming from someone who's like read tons and tons of contracts in both languages. I also think that in Cadence, the transaction and script layer is separated from the contract. So what that means is that all the, you know, contract logic is like in one area. And then the things that users actually send to change that contract, like minting an NFT or running a script, like, you know, reading an NFT, those are separated from the contract. So it makes a lot more sense architecturally for someone to read what's going on and also just like better understand what's going on. Whereas in Solidity, sort of everything is happening within the contract, and it's a lot harder to do that. And I think the last point that I'll mention is that in Cadence, the security is a lot better in the way that it's written. Actually, Andre here was mentioning that, you know, Cadence takes after TypeScript and Swift and stuff like that. In the contract, it's very hard for developers to mess up in their contracts, if that makes sense. Whereas in Solidity, it's actually quite easy to expose something that you didn't want to expose, or some bug in the contract, and that's why you see tons of, you know, bug bounties in the Ethereum space, and you read about hacks all the time. It's because it's a lot harder to code. So those are just some of my inputs, and happy to talk about it more, but don't want to take up too much time here.
No, that was a really brilliant answer that you it was pretty concise. And yeah, thank you for giving that insight. Yeah, there are a bunch of questions actually that we're sort of talking about, like cadence and, is it easy? Is it hard? Is it difficult? And I think you sort of answered it all in one go. So thank you so much, Jacob. And sorry for not bringing you up earlier.
No, it's totally fine. Thanks for having me.
Okay, awesome. The next
Casey, do you mind if Jacob just introduces himself super quickly?
Oh, yeah, totally. So Jacob, my bad. Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. Yeah. So Cadence, absolute god, friendliest guy you'll ever meet, super attractive. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I've been developing Cadence for a couple of years, been in the Flow space for a while, and I run something called Emerald City DAO, which just builds a lot of stuff in the Flow ecosystem and educates in the Flow ecosystem. I actually see a lot of familiar faces here too, and very happy we're getting to learn about Learnweb3. And I'm even going to learn probably a lot from the track as well. So thanks for doing this.
Awesome. Thank you for coming up, and thank you for giving your insight. It's great to meet you, Jacob, on stage. Awesome. So our next question is for, I believe, either me or Hardik, and it's Abbas, and he's asking us, what are the prerequisites for the Flow track? He says, with Cello, the prerequisite was sophomore. What's the prerequisite for Flow? I believe it's sophomore, right, Hardik?
Yeah, I think the same level. I think freshman is extremely basic. So if you have like sophomore level knowledge on the Learnweb3 website, I think that's a good entry point into Flow.
Agreed, 100%. So to answer that question, Abbas, the prerequisite, and thank you for asking us, the prerequisite to do the Flow track that's coming out next week will be sophomore. And I know a bunch of you have already completed it. So if you completed sophomore, try out Flow. Our next question.
Yeah, if I can just add real quick, you can do Flow without sort of any prerequisites technically if you have like prior programming experience. But if you do sophomore first, it will help you sort of understand differences and compare and contrast sort of the advantages and disadvantages of different things as well. Which is what I suggest. But if you have like previous Web2 experience, feel free to jump straight into Flow if you want to.
Agreed, 100%. Awesome. I think our next question is again from Makio, and I believe he already asked this, but he's asking, is there a demand for Cadence developers or Flow developers? And I believe the answer is yes, there is. There's quite a demand for Flow developers, and there's not enough developers right now. Andre, weren't you telling us? I'm not sure if you want to talk about this story, but you're telling us a bit about or sorry, Andrea, you're telling us a bit about camps, or there were a couple of boot camps.
Yeah. Actually, Jacob here is the guy that runs them. So as part of the DAO, as the Emerald City DAO, they run monthly Cadence boot camps, which I think would be a perfect companion to the Learnweb3 course, right? Because the Learnweb3 DAO course is kind of geared towards getting you from, as you said, Casey, from zero to hero, right? So theory, then practical examples, use cases, and maybe some developers wants to go a bit deeper into Cadence, right? Like wants to maybe have other sources of information. And that Cadence is, that bootcamp is purely Cadence focused. So a perfect companion to the Learnweb3 course. And it's every month. So Jacob, do you want to maybe share a little bit about when the next one is and how people can join?
Sure. Yeah, Andre, I think you covered it really well. Yeah, it's purely Cadence focused, and the next one's actually going to be starting. We're taking a very short break in August because we're sort of going overboard in the current one. But the next one's probably going to be September 1st. It'll run through the month of September. And like Andre said, it's a month long. We have live workshops every week, and people have really enjoyed it so far. So if you're interested in you do the Learnweb3 thing, and they do an awesome job, but you want to explore more or go the other direction. You're more than welcome to join. It's totally free and open for everybody to learn more about Cadence. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So yeah, there is a demand even outside of Learnweb3. There are Cadence courses and stuff like that. But to answer your question, Makazu, there is quite a demand for Flow developers, and a lot of people to teach developers, and sort of our track is going to be our take on it, and then our goal is to sort of nurture you guys for this specific track, to sort of track and nurture you guys as you sort of become Flow developers on the Flow ecosystem, hopefully get grants and opportunities, and hopefully job opportunities as well. So
yeah, and if you mind, Casey, I just want to mention one thing that I think is really important to mention in general, which is I like what Hardik said about not getting stuck in tutorial hell, but I do think that you can never have enough kind of interpretations of how to do something, right? So the more educational resources there are, the easier it is for someone to go through them and kind of pick up the commonalities and figure out what the underlying principles are. So yeah, I suggest everyone, regardless of what, even beyond Web3, as you're learning something, try to absorb as many different resources as possible, because every resource will have its own particular spin on it or its own particular novel interpretation. And by doing more than a couple of them, it's going to really prime you for like, okay, really understanding the topic. And that's why I really like that LearnWeb3 has like 3 examples. I don't know if I can get into the specific details. I won't, because I don't want to give anything away. But they have 3 specific examples, so you can kind of go through, and they get progressively more difficult. And there are 3 completely different topics, and that's great because you can absorb the differences across the topics or across the samples, and have more knowledge to kind of apply your knowledge to something completely different. So yeah, learn as much as you can, but as Hardik said, don't get stuck in just learning, build.
Agreed, 100%. Awesome. Thank you for answering that question and giving us your take on that, Andrea. I'm looking at the other questions that we have, and I'm going to speed run. I'm going to answer a couple of them myself and try to speed run a couple of them because we haven't gone through a bunch of them. Hardik, Andrea, Jacob, if you want to chip in, let me know. So, and after we go through this, a bunch of questions, we got some speakers up. We're going to let them talk, and we have some speakers that we're still going to bring up. We're going to let them talk, and we're going to hopefully end this space on time. So, one question that we have 2 similar questions, and they're basically asking, maybe I'll let Hardik answer this one. The question is, what's the difference between like a Web3 developer and a blockchain developer? And that's coming from Mohammed, and also sort of a bit from Wayne.
Yeah, I'll just do it really quick. Typically, these terms are often used interchangeably, but if there is a difference, typically the difference would apply to a blockchain developer being somebody who's doing like protocol engineering, like helping build Flow or Ethereum itself, versus Web3 developer typically refers to somebody building dApp.
Yeah. Perfect. Did I rug? No, you can still hear me. Yeah, 100%. That's exactly the answer there. Hardik, that was such a concise answer. Oh my God, thank you. That was so good. Yeah, I wasn't even okay. So I have the next question set up already, and I was like looking for it while you were talking. But the next question comes from 1024 Being, and he asks, can I be a Web3 developer without React/Next.js? And I believe the answer is yes, but React is so common that like it's so commonly used sort of for these dApps and like Web3 tutorials and such that you probably want to learn it. But I think it's possible to be a Web3 developer with React. Would you agree?
I think Andrea wanted to say something unmuted, but I guess my take on it is you can definitely do it. It's just the community around React tends to be larger in this Web3 space. But yeah, I'm sure you can find stuff apart from React as well where you can work with it.
Yeah, totally, 100%. I think it's important going back. I think this was something you asked Casey at the very beginning of the Twitter space, which is like what makes a Web3 developer. And Hardik mentioned that it's a lot of Web2 stuff plus a little sprinkle on top, right? So anything in the Web2 space is still very relevant. It's just that the way that we interact with state and our conventional backend changes. So you can use any front-end JavaScript framework you want if you're building like a front-end for people to use. whether it be React or Svelte or Vue or whatever. And you're still going to need, for a lot of projects, you're still going to need like a backend or a database, and that is using any typical backend language you want. But yeah, I totally agree that, especially for someone starting, picking a language and a framework and a stack that is very popular is going to make it easier to learn because of how many resources are already available.
I agree, and it sort of goes back to the same thing that we're all sort of talking about. There's a lot of resources out there for React, and yeah, thank you, Hardik, and thank you, Andrea, for sort of answering that question. And I believe that question was from 1024 on Twitter. Our next question comes from Dave, and he's asking, "What's the future of NFTs?" Like just NFTs, nothing else. What's the future of NFTs? I will say, I'm not going to speculate on that, but the future of developers in Web3, there'll always be something to build. So, yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that question, but the future of developers in Web3 is pretty long term, and hopefully NFTs as well. Our next question comes from, and we're going to take maybe one more question here, and then we're going to let people that are up speak right now. So our next question is coming from multiple people. Ibrahim, it's coming from Edna, and they're sort of trying to ask, like, where do we sort of begin? Where do you start? If you're like sort of new to developing, where do you start to become a Web3 developer? And I'll let Hardik answer this, but like short answer is like, I think probably I don't want to show, but I think like Learn Web3 is a great sort of option to start becoming a Web3 developer. We kind of try to teach you from, from knowing nothing to sort of doing smart contract security. And I think that's probably the best way to start, like one of a good way to start your journey into becoming a Web3 developer. Hardik, do you want to answer this question? Then we'll move on to other speakers.
Yeah, I mean, again, like without being shilly, I do think that like what we do differently at Learn Web3 is typically offer a very unbiased opinion on a lot of different things, and give you the knowledge to make decisions yourself. But apart from that, just to name other sources, you could also check out things like obviously Emerald City by Jacob, Build Space, like just Google for like some tutorial. There's also a lot of great YouTube channels, like Francesco does YouTube videos, and then like DApp University, Smart Contract Programmer, things like that. Find what works for you. But yeah, there's a shit ton of great resources if you just try to search for them. And also happy to take this conversation forward in the Discord as well after the space.
100%. And yeah, so those were sort of all of the questions that we're probably going to answer from the question thread. Maybe if maybe for the ones I missed, I'll try to go in and try to answer them by text. But yeah, so those are all the questions in the question thread. We have a lot of people coming up to speak, and we're going to end the space pretty soon. I want to end the space maybe in 5 to 10 minutes and actually be sort of strict about the time that we end the space. But before that, I just want to, I see a lot of, I want to say thank you guys for coming to the space. We had over 300 people at sort of the peak of the space. And yeah, I just want to say a big shout out to sort of, number one, all of the people that have come out to sort of listen to us. And number two, to all of like the dedicated like Learn Web3 members that I see in the audience. I wish I could sort of talk more about what we're doing in the background, right? But Learn Web3 is growing a lot, and it's, I don't know, it's amazing to see from my point of view, and I can't wait to share more things with you guys. But just thank you guys for coming out to listen to the space. Thank you for always supporting. I see Abbas, Anish, Vatsal, Sajal, Alanaro, Kashaga, Satar, Ayush. I see Nils. I see a lot of people that sort of I recognize in the audience. I just want to say thank you guys for coming out to the space, and I really cannot wait for you guys to see what we have in store for you. And I don't know, I just love you guys. Thank you for coming up to listen to us again. And yeah, with that out of the way, why don't we let some people that are up on stage speak, and then we will go ahead and end the space. We actually have everyone. We were able to bring up everyone that requested to speak, except for one extra person. Why don't we go in order? In order of who requested to speak first, why don't we let Blockfather, you get the first question. Are you here, Blockfather? Perhaps he is not here. That is okay. Weak Sauce, are you here?
Hey, I see Weak Sauce as a listener.
Nope, they're a speaker.
Hey.
What's up, Weak Sauce?
Yeah, hey. Thanks so much for bringing me up. It's kind of in line with
I don't know. I still see him/her as a listener. I think Twitter's being slow or something.
Oh, am I working?
Oh, there you go.
Yep, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah, it's in line with a question that's already been asked about, like, where do you start if you're new? But what about in terms of progression of learning languages? Like, would somebody who just knows HTML and CSS jump right into learning a Web3 language, or should they go through like JavaScript first?
I'll let Harder take this one.
Yeah, I think learning JavaScript, or like not just JavaScript, like learning any programming language sort of like helps a lot. I think I typically wouldn't suggest going straight for any sort of Web3 language, be it Cadence, be it Solidity or anything, just because there are certain concepts that work differently in this world in those languages that may be a little confusing at first, like understanding transactions and signers and keys and all of these things can be a little tricky if you don't have like traditional quote unquote programming language experience. JavaScript is obviously one of the more popular ones. So go through that. We have a bunch of sort of free JavaScript resources linked on the Learn-Web3 website. And obviously, if you Google, you can find like 1,000 resources on it. Yeah, go through like a Web2 language a little bit first. And then like the sort of model, the mental model for Web3 languages will make sense better, I think. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for coming up to speak and supporting the space. And I'm glad your question was answered. So I think our next speaker will be Michael. Michael, I saw you requested to speak earlier, and I missed you up. What's up?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my app didn't give me any audio after you put me on stage, which is pretty bad. So I had to do that again. Thank you very much for reading your messages. I'm a developer and co-founder, CTO. I'm already developing on Solidity, and I got to, and I'm also doing some YouTube videos about whatever I care about. And I did a video about Flow Avatar, which is actually an NFT project in the Flow ecosystem. And I talked to the founders, and we are very much in touch. And why I'm mentioning this, not to shield the project, right? Just because it's such a, like, the project has a lot of features that doing like programming them in Solidity would be pretty hard, in my opinion. And I saw like they didn't have a hard time doing that in Cadence and on Flow. I was like, that's very interesting. So now I see this space, and I have two questions. It's a bit technical, but I think you can manage. So first question is, are these, like when I do smart contracts with Cadence, is the code immutable? Is there any, and if yes, then, how can I, create something like, upgradable contracts? Is there a concept like this as well? And the other question is, how do you do random numbers on Cadence? Maybe it's a bit harder question, yes, but those two are on my mind right now as a developer.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks so much for calling out Flow Avatar. It's definitely one of the most creative projects, at least in terms of like, composability and dynamicity in the NFT space. And as you said, Luca from the Flow Avatar project, one of the reasons he was able to build it was thanks to Cadence. To answer your two specific questions, I'll go in reverse order because the random number generation, I believe there is a random generating function on Cadence, but there are no, as of yet, there is no independent like Oracle for random numbers. So there is a random number function in Cadence itself, but if you want like pure verifiable, etc., then you would probably need an Oracle or do something like that, which still needs to be built by someone. So if you want to build it, it'd be great.
I want to build it because everyone needs it, right? When they create
Exactly.
some kind of game or something like that, it's always exactly the same outcome every time, and you want some randomness, and you need, many people need that, I guess. So I can do that.
Awesome. And sorry, your first question was about mutability and upgradability. So Cadence contracts are upgradable. So they were built. So yeah, that was also one of the learnings from the team, having come from the Solidity world, is that sometimes contracts need to change, and most attributes can be changed. You can just redeploy your contract and update it. And some fields cannot be changed, right? But yeah, they are upgradable, and I can point you to the documentation to learn more about the upgradability side.
Also, dude, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I was going to suggest any intermediate or sort of advanced developers looking for a good side project, build an Oracle for Flow.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Thank you for answering that question, Andrea. And thank you for, let me give you a follow back. Thank you for coming up and answering that asking that great question, Michael. Yeah, dude, let's go. We're actually getting close to the end of the space. We're going to be strict with when we end it this time instead of going super overboard. So we have a couple of more people on this space. Let's go through these questions as quick as we can and say our final words. So why don't we go next to Priyanka? I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. Are you here?
Hi, yes. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity, and you got the name right. It is Priyanka. So I am a founder of a Web3 skilling company, and we predominantly do a hybrid model where we do an offline training for Solidity smart contract engineering specifically. So I'll just restrict myself to, understanding the difference. I'm sorry if this was covered earlier. But if we are going to, teach the fundamentals of Flow to the students who are already, having a prerequisite, they know their foundational programming concepts, everything from value types to control structures to, even the abstract contracts and how we do the view and pure in Solidity. So do we then, basically then, in Solidity, we just probably teach them the remix compiler and technically, how the programming happens on this particular development environment. So in case we need to switch to Flow, how would you then, expect the foundations of programming to be taught with respect to Flow?
Right. There's a lot of the tools. So I think one thing to mention is that Flow is relatively new, right? So a lot of the developer tooling is still being built, especially the higher order abstractions, right? So things like Remix. There's some developers building really useful tools. Emerald City is one of them. I would say if you already have a strong background, I would definitely start and just dive in. We have a playground where you can just kind of absorb the differences, right? You can focus on what changes. And then we also have sample apps that can get you started right away. Like the most common use case that developers are looking for when they come on Flow is an NFT marketplace. And we have provided a end-to-end, nearly production-ready sample app that people can just take and run with, which is called KD Items. In terms of higher level frameworks that make it easier to build, I don't know, Jacob, if you want to talk about, what Emerald City is building, what Decentology is building, but I would say I would definitely start with the foundation so you understand what's going on. given that also Cadence is pretty approachable.
Yeah, and just to add to that, because like I feel like I recently sort of went through this. I did a lot of work with Cadence recently, so I think as a developer, I think like as you said, like some of the higher order abstractions may be missing, but it's still like it's pretty good, honestly. I think like with like the Flow CLI, the Flow Playground is absolutely amazing. I find it to be a much better experience than Remix personally. I'm not a huge fan of Remix. I think people who know me know that. But other than that, sort of, I think when it comes to like the technical side of things, the fundamental differences, obviously there's differences in the chain itself, right? Like how does consensus and sort of execution work? So that's something to possibly dig into. On the coding side of things, the main features that sort of stand out is, first of all, resources and account storage. That's the sort of mental model shift in how you do data storage in a like a sort of DApp on Flow versus in Solidity. It has the initial sort of little bit of a learning curve as you sort of shift your mindset around how that works. If students are experienced with Rust, it might seem very similar to some of Rust's concepts, but otherwise maybe a little bit of learning curve there. Other than resources, upgradability is cool. And sort of the third, I think, most important thing as I was going through this was sort of like how transactions and scripting works. So in the Solidity / Ethereum world, we're very used to like using JavaScript or like Ethers.js, Web3.js, something to like call functions, be it a view function, be it like a sort of a mutating function or anything. On Flow, what's interesting is that transactions and scripts themselves are also written in Cadence. So like it's a very sort of native experience of writing like client-side code in Cadence as well a little bit to some extent, and then you sort of send that transaction over using the Flow client library. So that's kind of, yeah, those three I think are probably the quote unquote new things to focus on, but pretty cool experience, I think.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for chiming in there, Hardik. We have we have 6 minutes. We have 6 minutes left. I really want to get to Monty's question. Sorry to sort of rush through this, but Monty, you have the next question. The floor is yours, and then after we'll wrap up. Monty, hello. Monty isn't here. Andrea, I saw you unmuted your mic. Did you have anything to add to the previous question?
No. I was just going to say huge +1 to everything Hardik said.
Okay, awesome. Then, great. Yeah, so I think we have 5 minutes left in this space. I feel really bad because last week we went like 40 minutes overtime, so I don't want to sort of repeat that again. But yeah, so I think those were all of the questions that we are going to ask. Sorry if I was a little rushing through questions today. I was trying to sort of experimenting with like, a new timing with the space to see, if we could finish on time instead of going overtime constantly. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the space turned out. Do you guys have any, guys, everyone that's listening, please give the speakers a follow. Hardik, Flo, Andrea, Francesca, please give them a follow. Any of our designating speakers, do you guys have anything you want to say to the audience who's been here for over an hour now?
Thank you. I just want to say
just a quick,
real quick.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, sorry, Peony. We're just gonna end the space. Let Hardik say his final words.
Yeah, actually, just if you have any questions, ping us on the Discord or DM on Twitter. But I guess staying true to time, just want to say thank you to everyone for coming. We're really, really excited for sort of this new track. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it, hopefully as much as I enjoyed sort of working on this. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. It's just a few more days, and yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, and I want to say more, but I kind of want to post the recording as well for you guys for this space. Andrea, do you have anything to say to sort of the people from listening from Flow, the people listening from LearnWeb3 who've been here for over an hour now?
Best of luck in going through your LearnWeb3 journey on Flow. We'd love to welcome you to the Flow ecosystem. If you're building and have any questions, always reach out. Yeah, you'll find it's a very friendly community, especially a very collaborative and really tight-knit developer community on Flow. So once you do join, give a shout out to me, and I can connect you with all the best peeps. And yeah, best of luck in your Web3 journey, everyone.
Agreed, 100%. I guess what I want to say, just before we end the space, my final words. Number one, thank you guys for being here for over an hour listening to us. We've been doing spaces honestly for 7 months now, and when we started, I remember our first space. It was like really small. It was a community space, right? And we've grown so much, and I'm really excited for this Flow track and this sort of this partnership with Flow and nurturing you guys onto the Flow ecosystem. And I don't know, I'm really grateful, really like, thank you guys for sticking with us for so long. We wouldn't have been able to get this far without the community. And this is, when I say this is just the beginning, it's just the beginning, right? Like there are so many, especially this one thing that I really want to announce, but I can't announce it yet. There's really exciting things coming for the future of this community, especially when we transition into a DAO. There's a lot of exciting things, and it wouldn't have been possible without you guys. So I just want to say thank you to everyone listening. Thank you to everyone, especially who's been with us from the beginning, contributing from the beginning. We really appreciate you guys. And the people that, come and listen to these spaces every single week, like just a big shout out to you, man, because we wouldn't have been able to get this far without you guys. And I just can't wait until like August is going to be crazy. That's all I'm going to say. August is going to be a crazy month for announcements. And yeah, I'm hyped. I'm excited. Hardik's like looking at me right now. He's like, don't say shit. Don't spoil anything. Casey, be quiet. And I'm trying my best not to spoil anything, but August is going to be crazy, and the culmination of sort of what we've been able to accomplish here at LearnWeb3. And I'm just really excited. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I really want to end the space. Francesco is requesting to speak. Maybe he has some final words, and then from there, only while Francesco is saying bye to you guys, let me post the recording for you guys just in case you want to go ahead and look back on anything we said here. Everything here has been recorded. Francesco, what's up? Do you have anything to say to the audience?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
It's a bit buggy, my UI.
I think Twitter's lagging. I still see him as a listener. I don't know.
Can you hear me?
I can hear him.
Can you hear me?
What?
We can hear him, don't worry.
Yep.
I'll be fast because I don't know what happened with my phone. So I've been quiet, but I was listening. But I needed to relax during the weekends. I'm something big in my mind, but